Welcome! Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey that stretches from the smallest microscopic wonders to the most monumental forces on our planet. It begins quite simply with a single moment of presence. Imagine you are standing on a high, remote mountain ridge far above the bustle of the world. The air here is thin and perfectly still. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the sharp, refreshing coolness of that mountain air as it fills your lungs. It is crisp, clean, and carries the silent weight of ancient stone and frozen water. In this stillness, the world seems to pause. But beneath the surface, there is a rhythm, a slow, steady pulse that has been beating for millions of years. This is the realm of deep time. We often think of time in seconds, minutes, or hours. But here, time is measured in layers of snow and the slow, inevitable creep of ice. It is a world where the monumental is built from the microscopic. Every massive glacier, every towering ice cap that carves through solid rock, began as something so small it could rest invisibly on the tip of your finger. There is a profound peace in realizing how the smallest things, given enough time and patience, can reshape the very face of the earth. It is a reminder that there is no rush. Everything happens in its own season, at its own natural pace. As we settle into this quiet exploration together, I want to invite you to join our quiet community. If these stories help you find a sense of calm and rest, please consider subscribing. It is a gentle way to help our channel grow, and it ensures that we can continue to share these peaceful journeys with you. But for now, just let your body relax, let your eyes grow heavy, and allow your mind to drift toward the peaks of the high mountains. Up here, far above the clouds and the noise of the valleys below, the mountain range stretches out like a sleeping giant. The peaks are jagged and white, reaching toward a sky that is a deep, velvety indigo. There is no wind here, only the soft, muffled silence of the high altitude. It is a place of absolute clarity and profound rest. In this rarefied air, the boundaries between the earth and the stars seem to blur. We are standing at the very edge of the sky where the story of the ice begins. It starts not with a crash or a roar, but with a silent, beautiful transformation high above us, in the cold, thin reaches of the atmosphere. High above the mountain peaks where we stood just a moment ago, the air is even colder and thinner. This is the troposphere, the layer of our atmosphere where the weather of our world is born. In this vast, silent space, miles above the earth, a transformation is taking place that is as delicate as it is profound. It is the birth of a single snowflake. In the freezing reaches of the sky, the air is filled with invisible water vapor. Water in its gaseous form, drifting like a ghost through the cold. But for this vapor to become something solid, something tangible, it needs a starting point. It cannot simply freeze out of thin air. It needs a tiny anchor, a microscopic heart to build upon. This is a process scientists call nucleation. Imagine a single stray speck of dust. Perhaps it is a grain of sand carried by a high-altitude wind from a desert thousands of miles away. Or perhaps it is a microscopic piece of soot from a distant forest fire, or even a tiny grain of pollen that has drifted far beyond the flowers of the valley. To us, this speck is invisible, but to the water vapor, it is a destination. As the air cools, the water molecules begin to find this tiny particle. They move toward it, drawn by a silent, elemental attraction. But they don't just pile on top of one another in a chaotic jumble. There is a deep hidden logic to how they settle. You see, every single water molecule is polar. It has a positive side and a negative side, much like a tiny compass needle or a miniature magnet. Because of this polarity, the molecules are very particular about how they join together. The positive end of one molecule is drawn to the negative end of another, creating a gentle but firm bond. They are like pieces of a puzzle that only fit together in one specific way. This magnetic dance dictates the entire future of the crystal. It ensures that as the water vapor transitions from a gas into a solid, it does so with incredible precision and order. Let your mind drift closer now. We are moving away from the vastness of the indigo sky and the panoramic views of the mountains. We are narrowing our focus, zooming in further and further until the world of the large falls away. We are entering the microscopic realm where the very first building blocks of the ice are clicking into place. We are watching as that tiny speck of dust is slowly enveloped by a shimmering, transparent shell. The foundation is being laid, molecule by molecule, for something beautiful and perfectly symmetrical. The microscopic heart of the snowflake is beginning to beat with the rhythm of the cold. As we watch this tiny seed of ice, something remarkable begins to happen. A pattern emerges from the stillness. It isn't random, and it isn't chaotic. It is a masterpiece of natural geometry, unfolding with a quiet, certain purpose. This is the birth of the hexagonal lattice, the invisible molecular blueprint that will define everything this snowflake is destined to become. In this quiet, microscopic space, we can see the very first building blocks of the ice clicking into place. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the very nature of a single water molecule. Each one is a simple yet elegant construction, one oxygen atom and two smaller hydrogen atoms. You might imagine them as tiny, silent bells vibrating with a very specific energy, but they aren't arranged in a straight, rigid line. Instead, the two hydrogen atoms sit at a very specific angle to the oxygen atom, an angle of approximately 104.5 degrees. It is a slight, gentle bend, like the soft curve of a person's shoulders as they rest, or the spread of a bird's wings as it glides through the air. This 104.5 degree angle is one of the most important numbers in all of nature. It is the reason life as we know it exists, and it is the reason for the snowflake's unique shape. Because of this precise angle, when the water molecules begin to link up and freeze, they cannot just stack on top of one another in any direction. They are naturally guided into a very specific arrangement. Think of it as a silent choreography. As the molecules move closer together, the positive and negative charges pull them into a series of rings. Because of that specific molecular bend, these rings naturally form with 6 sides. They create a hexagonal frame, a perfect 6-sided honeycomb structure that is both incredibly light and remarkably strong. This is why, across all the billions of snowflakes, that have ever fallen throughout the history of our world, they almost always share this same fundamental geometry. Whether they are wide and flat or tall and thin, they are rooted in the symmetry of the number 6. It is a rule of nature, written into the very chemistry of the water itself. Take a slow, deep breath and imagine this tiny, transparent hexagon floating in the vastness of the clouds. At this stage, it is still so small that it would be invisible to the human eye, a microscopic plate of glass, perfectly balanced and perfectly still. The foundation is now complete. The internal logic of the crystal has been established, and the molecular bonds are firm. But the journey is only just beginning. The air around this tiny hexagon is still filled with moisture, thousands of other water molecules drifting nearby, looking for a place to land. Now that the central structure is set, the crystal is ready to expand. It begins to reach out into the cold, damp air, its 6 corners acting like tiny magnets. The stage is set for the snowflake to grow outward, transforming from a simple geometric plate into something far more complex and beautiful. It is ready to find its form as it begins its long, slow descent toward the earth. Imagine that tiny, 6-sided plate of ice drifting in the quiet, damp air of a high-altitude cloud. It is a perfect, flat crystal, no larger than a speck of dust. But it cannot stay this way for long. The air around it is thick with invisible water vapor, and as the temperature fluctuates ever so slightly, the crystal begins to reach out. These are the beginnings of the snowflake's arms, what scientists call dendrites. The word dendrite comes from the Greek word for tree, and as you watch this process in your mind, you can see why. As the crystal moves through the cloud, it encounters more water molecules. Because the hexagon has 6 distinct corners, those points stick out a tiny bit further into the surrounding air than the flat sides do. This small difference in distance changes everything. The water vapor in the air is more likely to bump into those protruding corners first. It is a bit like a person reaching out their hand in a crowd. The fingers are the first thing to make contact. As those water molecules touch the corners, they freeze instantly, adding to the length of the point. This is a fascinating process known as branching. In the world of physics, growth tends to happen where there is the most opportunity. Because the points of the hexagon are always moving into new air first, they gather more material than the flat edges between them. This creates a feedback loop. The more a point grows, the further it sticks out. The further it sticks out, the more water vapor it catches. Soon the simple hexagon has transformed. From each of its 6 corners, a long, delicate arm begins to stretch outward, symmetrical and elegant. These arms do not just grow in straight lines. As they lengthen, they too develop their own tiny corners and points. From the main branches, even smaller side branches begin to sprout, mirroring the molecular angles we spoke of earlier. It looks like a miniature frozen forest or the delicate veins of a leaf, all contained within a space smaller than a teardrop. This is the birth of the stellar dendrite, the classic star-shaped snowflake we all recognize. It is a masterpiece of natural engineering, built entirely out of thin air and kishkt. With every passing second, the snowflake is gaining complexity. It is no longer a simple microscopic grain. It is becoming a heavy, ornate structure. As it adds more and more layers of ice, it becomes just a little bit heavier than the air around it. It begins its slow, wobbling descent toward the earth. It is not a fall, really. It is more like a gentle dance. It tumbles and spins through different layers of the atmosphere, each one with its own unique temperature and its own level of moisture. Every movement, every slight change in the wind will continue to shape it. The snowflake is beginning a journey that will make it unlike any other crystal in the sky. As it drifts, take a moment to imagine the silence of this process. There is no sound to the growth of a crystal, only the quiet, invisible movement of molecules finding their place. The snowflake is a tiny passenger in a vast, cold sky, growing more beautiful with every inch it travels. It is preparing for its long journey down through the clouds toward the mountains and the valleys waiting far below. Each arm is a record of the air it has passed through, a map of its own history written in ice. As the snowflake gains weight and complexity, it prepares to enter the lower, more turbulent parts of the atmosphere, where its true uniqueness will be forged. As our snowflake begins its long descent, we often hear it said that no two are exactly alike. It is a thought that feels almost impossible when you consider how many billions of flakes fall in a single storm, covering the mountains in a blanket of white. Yet, the science behind this uniqueness is as beautiful and intricate as the crystal itself. The reason for this infinite variety lies in the journey. Every single snowflake follows its own individual path from the clouds to the earth, and no two paths are ever quite the same. Think of the atmosphere not as a uniform block of cold air, but as a swirling, invisible sea of varying temperatures and moisture. As the snowflake drifts downward, it encounters microscopic pockets of air. In one pocket, the air might be slightly more humid, encouraging the branches to grow long and thin. A moment later, a tiny gust of wind might push the flake into a drier region, where the growth slows down and the edges become more blunt and solid. Because the snowflake is so small and light, even a distance of a few millimeters can mean a different environment. Two snowflakes might start their lives only a fraction of an inch apart, but as they tumble and spin, they are buffeted by different molecules. One might experience a temperature of 10 degrees Fahrenheit, while its neighbor experiences 10.1 degrees. This tiny difference is enough to change the way the water molecules snap into place on the hexagonal lattice. By the time they have fallen thousands of feet, these countless tiny variations have added up. Like a diary written in ice, the shape of the snowflake is a perfect record of every cloud and every breeze it has passed through on its way down to us. This concept of infinite variety was famously championed by a man named Wilson Bentley. In the late 1800s, on a quiet farm in Vermont, Bentley became the first person to successfully photograph a single snowflake. He spent 40 years of his life standing in the cold, catching flakes on black velvet and rushing them under his microscope before they could melt. He captured over 5,000 images in his lifetime, and in all those decades of patient observation, he never found two that were identical. He called them tiny miracles of beauty and ice flowers. His work confirmed what physics suggests, that the mathematical possibilities of arranging water molecules into these branching patterns are so vast that the universe could go on forever, without ever repeating the exact same design twice. Take a slow, deep breath and imagine that incredible diversity falling all around you. Millions upon millions of unique masterpieces, each one a fleeting moment of perfect geometry, descending in total silence. Our snowflake is now one of these finished works. It is no longer a growing seedling of ice, but a heavy, ornate, and beautiful geometric masterpiece. It has survived the turbulent winds of the high atmosphere and is now passing through the belly of the clouds. It is solid, intricate, and ready to complete its journey. As it leaves the mist of the clouds behind, it enters the clear, still air of the lower mountain slopes, where it will finally come to rest. The snowflake is no longer a solitary traveler. It is about to become part of something much larger, joining the vast, quiet landscape that waits below in the shadows of the peaks. As the snowflake drifts through those final few feet of air, a remarkable change takes place in the environment around it. You may have noticed this yourself during a heavy snowfall, that sudden, profound hush that seems to wrap the world in a velvet blanket. It isn't just your imagination, and it isn't simply because people stay indoors or cars slow down. There is a deep physical reason for this peace. The silence of falling snow is a beautiful intersection of geometry and physics. Normally, the world is a noisy place because most surfaces are hard and reflective. Sound waves, which are essentially vibrations traveling through the air, strike the ground, the trees, and the rocks, bouncing back and echoing into our ears. But when a layer of fresh snow begins to cover the landscape, it changes the way the world listens. Because of the intricate branching shapes we've been exploring, those delicate hexagonal arms and dendrites, a pile of fallen snow is actually mostly empty space. It is incredibly porous. Think of a professional recording studio where the walls are covered in soft, jagged foam to prevent echoes. Freshly fallen snow acts in exactly the same way. It is a natural acoustic insulator. When a sound wave hits a drift of new snow, it doesn't bounce back. Instead, the vibrations get lost in the tiny, labyrinthine gaps between the billions of individual ice crystals. The energy of the sound is absorbed and trapped within the snow's porous structure, converted into an infinitesimal amount of heat that we can't even feel. This is why, in the middle of a snowstorm, the sounds of the distant world seem to vanish. The sharp snap of a twig or the call of a bird becomes muffled and soft, as if the air itself has grown thicker and more protective. This acoustic dampening creates a sense of profound isolation and safety, a quiet that invites us to slow our own breathing and match the stillness of the mountain. Take a moment now to imagine that silence, as if all the noise of your day is being absorbed by a soft, white layer of cool, clean snow. Our snowflake is now part of this great silent dampener. It has finally reached the end of its long, tumbling descent from the troposphere. With a lightness that is almost impossible to measure, it makes contact with the surface. It does not land on bare earth or a summer leaf. Instead, it touches down upon a vast, white expanse that stretches for miles in every direction. This is a massive ancient ice sheet, a glacier that has waited thousands of years for this specific moment. The flake settles into a small, shadowed crevice between other crystals that arrived just hours before. Here, in the absolute stillness of the high peaks, it is no longer a falling object. It has become a permanent part of the geography, but even though its journey through the air is over, its transformation is only beginning. The snowflake has joined a collective mass, a frozen archive of time where the weight of the future is about to press down upon the memories of the past. Below it lie hundreds of feet of ice, and above it, more flakes are already beginning to settle, adding their own quiet weight to the story of the mountain. As our snowflake rests there, nestled amongst billions of its peers, it begins to lose its individual identity. It is no longer a solitary traveler of the wind. It has become a fundamental building block of something vast and ancient. This transition from a single fragile flake to a collective mass is one of nature's most patient miracles. When snow first falls, it is light, airy, and full of space. But here, on the high shoulders of the mountain, the snow does not simply melt away when the sun emerges. Instead, it enters a state of deep, quiet persistence. Over the course of a year, as the seasons cycle from the biting cold of winter to the softer light of spring, the snowflake undergoes a profound physical change. The delicate, lace-like points we admired earlier, those 6 beautiful arms, begin to soften. Through a process of sublimation and subtle melting, the sharp edges of the crystal are rounded off. The snowflake begins to look less like a star and more like a tiny, translucent grain of sand. This is the birth of what scientists call firn. Firn is a beautiful, transitional state of water. The word itself comes from a Swiss-German term meaning of last year, and it perfectly describes snow that has survived the warmth of a summer without vanishing. It is denser than the fresh powder that blankets a winter meadow, but it is not yet the hard, clear ice of the deep glacier. It is granular and heavy, a textured layer that sits between the ephemeral world of the atmosphere and the enduring world of the ancient ice. If you were to run your hand through a layer of firn, it would feel coarse and gritty, like a collection of tiny glass beads. As our snowflake, now a grain of firn, settles into its new shape, the world above it continues to move. New storms arrive, bringing fresh waves of white crystals that drift down to cover the old. Each new layer adds its own infinitesimal weight to the surface. It is a slow, rhythmic accumulation, a stacking of days, months, and years. This weight is gentle at first, like a heavy quilt being pulled over you as you sleep. But as the inches turn to feet and the feet turn to yards, that weight becomes a powerful force. The snowflake is no longer at the surface, feeling the touch of the wind. It is being cradled by the layers above it, pressed closer and closer to the grains below. The air pockets that once allowed it to dampen the sound of the mountain are being squeezed. The gaps are narrowing. There is a sense of profound settling, a movement toward a deeper, more solid existence. The snowflake is being invited into the very heart of the glacier, where time is measured not in seconds, but in the slow, steady pulse of the earth itself. As the pressure builds, we begin to leave the world of the light and the airy, moving toward a place where the history of the world is written in the weight of the ice. Take a slow, deep breath and imagine that weight, not as a burden, but as a steady, grounding presence, holding everything in place. As we move further beneath the surface, we enter a realm where time itself seems to compress. Each new winter adds a fresh layer, a new chapter of snow that presses down on the chapters written before it. This is the slow, heavy work of the mountain. If you could listen closely to the heart of the snowpack, you might hear the faintest, most microscopic hiss, the sound of air being gently exhaled from the earth. When snow first falls, it is incredibly light, composed of nearly 90% air. But as the weight of the years accumulates, that air is slowly squeezed out. It migrates upward through tiny winding channels until the gaps between the grains of firn begin to close forever. This is a patient, unrelenting transformation known as recrystallization. Under the immense pressure of the layers above, the individual grains of snow don't just break, they begin to fuse. At a molecular level, the crystals reach out to one another, merging their boundaries until they become a single, continuous mass of solid glacial ice. This process is one of nature's most enduring marathons. It can take decades or even several centuries for a single season of snowfall to be fully integrated into the body of the glacier. Think of a snowflake that fell during a quiet evening 100 years ago. For all that time, it has been waiting, settling deeper and deeper, feeling the steady increase of the world's weight. Above it, the seasons have turned 100 times. Generations of animals have passed over the surface, and the winds have roared and whispered. But here, deep within the stack, there is only a profound frozen stillness. The snowflake has surrendered its delicate star-like shape to become something much stronger, something that can endure for millennia. By the time the air is almost entirely gone, the ice has reached a state of incredible density. It is no longer the bright, opaque white of a fresh snowdrift. It has become heavy, clear, and cold. As we travel deeper into these ancient layers, we are leaving the world of weather behind and entering the world of geology. The pressure here is a grounding presence, a physical manifestation of time itself. We are moving into the deep ice now, where the very atmosphere of the past is held in a silent, crystalline grip. The further down we go, the more the world changes. The shadows grow longer, the silence grows heavier, and soon, even the way the light behaves will begin to shift in this dense, quiet sanctuary. As we descend further into this frozen sanctuary, the light begins to change in a way that feels almost otherworldly. It is no longer the bright, scattered white of the surface, which can sometimes be so brilliant it dazzles the eyes. Instead, a soft, ethereal glow begins to permeate the surroundings. This is the secret of the blue light, a phenomenon that occurs only when nature has had centuries to work its quiet craft. When you look into the depths of a glacier, you aren't seeing a reflection of the sky above, nor is it a trick of the shadows. You are seeing the true color of ancient, pressurized ice. In fresh snow, there are millions of tiny air pockets trapped between the delicate arms of the crystals. These pockets act like miniature mirrors, scattering every wavelength of light that hits them. Because all colors are reflected back at once, our eyes perceive the snow as a pure, brilliant white. But, as we have seen, the weight of the world above eventually squeezes those air bubbles away. As the air vanishes, the ice becomes a dense crystalline filter, and its relationship with light undergoes a profound transformation. It is a beautiful reality of physics that water molecules and ice crystals naturally absorb the longer, warmer wavelengths of the light spectrum, the reds, the oranges, and the yellows. As sunlight travels into the dense body of the glacier, these warm colors are slowly soaked up by the ice, losing their energy and fading away. But the shorter, cooler wavelengths, the serene blues and the deep violets, are not absorbed so easily. Instead, they are scattered and reflected back through the ice, traveling through the clear, dense structure until they reach our eyes. Imagine standing within a cavern carved into the heart of the glacier. The walls around you aren't just blue. They are a deep, vibrating sapphire, a hue so pure and saturated it feels like a physical presence. It is a color that seems to hold the stillness of the deep ocean and the vastness of the twilight sky all at once. The deeper the ice and the more air that has been removed, the more intense this blue becomes. It is a visual testament to the incredible density of the mass surrounding us. This blue light is the signature of time itself, a sign that the ice has been resting here, undisturbed, for a very long time. We are now surrounded by a mass that is hundreds, even thousands of feet thick. At this staggering depth, the ice has moved beyond being a simple collection of snow layers. It has become a single, massive entity, a monolithic body of frozen history that stretches out for miles in every direction. This giant weight sits heavy upon the bedrock, a silent and seemingly immovable force. But even in this deep blue silence, there is a hidden vitality. The sheer magnitude of this ice, the immense pressure generated by its own gargantuan weight, is beginning to create a slow rhythmic change. The stillness we feel is only a snapshot in time, for the heart of the glacier is preparing to do something remarkable. Under the weight of its own existence, the giant is starting to stir. In the deep blue silence we have found ourselves in, it is easy to imagine that this world is perfectly still, frozen in a single moment of time. But if we could speed up our perception, if we could watch a century pass in the blink of an eye, we would see something truly magnificent. The glacier is not a static block of ice. It is a river, a vast, ancient river of frozen water that is constantly, patiently on the move. This is the great paradox of the ice. It is a solid that floats. Under the immense, staggering weight of its own body, the ice begins to yield. We often think of ice as something brittle, something that cracks or shatters when you strike it or drop it on a hard floor. And at the surface, where the air is cold and the pressure is light, that is largely true. But deep within the heart of the glacier, hundreds of feet below the surface, the rules of physics begin to change. The weight of the layers above becomes so great that the ice crystals can no longer maintain their rigid, brittle form. Instead, they begin to behave like a very thick, very slow-moving fluid. This remarkable process is known to scientists as plastic deformation. It is a beautiful rhythmic dance happening at the molecular level, far beneath the snowy crust. Imagine the individual ice crystals, those hexagonal lattices we spoke of earlier, stacked one on top of the other like a deck of playing cards. Under the relentless, heavy pull of gravity, these crystals do not break. Instead, they begin to slide. One layer of molecules glides over the next, shifting ever so slightly, inch by inch, year by year. It is as if the ice has become like warm wax or thick, dark honey, responding to the slope of the land beneath it with a quiet, persistent grace. This movement is entirely internal. It is the ice itself stretching and reshaping, flowing around hidden obstacles, and following the ancient contours of the mountain valleys. It does not need to melt to move. It moves because it is simply too heavy to stay still. Gravity is the invisible hand that pulls the glacier downward, drawing it from the high, snowy peaks where it was born toward the lower valleys far below. It is a journey of incredible patience. While a river of water might rush over rocks in a spray of white foam, the river of ice moves with a dignity that defies our human sense of time. As the glacier flows, it carries everything with it. The tiny air bubbles, the specks of ancient dust, and the very structure of the ice itself are all part of this slow-motion migration. The entire mass is shifting, a monolithic entity that acts with a single, unified purpose. Even as new snow falls at the top to replenish the source, the older ice is always moving forward, always seeking the path of least resistance. We are witnessing a force that is both gentle and unstoppable, a mountain that has decided to walk. The internal flow of the ice is just one part of the glacier's journey, however. While the middle and upper layers are busy sliding past one another in that graceful plastic dance, something else is happening at the very base of the ice, where the glacier meets the cold, hard skin of the earth. Down there, in the darkness where the ice touches the bedrock, a different kind of magic is beginning to take hold, allowing this giant to move in ways that seem almost impossible for something so massive. The glacier is not just flowing within itself, it is preparing to glide. Beneath the weight of 1,000 winters, where the heavy, blue heart of the glacier finally meets the ancient, unmoving bedrock of the mountain, a hidden transformation occurs. This is the realm of basal sliding, a second and equally vital way that these frozen giants make their way across the surface of our world. If the internal flow we spoke of earlier is like the slow stretching of dough, then basal sliding is the graceful glide of a skater across a frozen pond. It is here, in the cold, pressurized darkness, that the glacier truly detaches from the earth and begins its long, silent journey. You might wonder how something so cold could ever lisp. The secret lies in a fascinating principle of physics known as the pressure melting point. At the very bottom of the glacier, the weight of the ice above is so immense, thousands of feet of compacted snow pressing down with unimaginable force, that it actually lowers the temperature at which ice turns back into water. Even in an environment that remains well below the freezing point we are familiar with, this crushing pressure is enough to coax a few molecules of ice to surrender their solid form. At the same time, the Earth itself contributes its own quiet warmth. Deep within the crust, geothermal heat is constantly radiating outward, seeping into the bedrock that cradles the glacier. This subtle, rising warmth meets the pressurized ice from below, and together these two forces create a miracle of lubrication, a thin, shimmering film of liquid water. This film is often microscopic, perhaps only a few molecules thick in places, yet it is powerful enough to change the fate of the entire mountain of ice. This layer of water acts as a lubricant, reducing the friction between the jagged rock and the heavy ice. It fills the tiny cracks and hollows of the stone, creating a smooth surface that allows the glacier to skate. Instead of being locked to the mountain by the grip of frost, the glacier begins to float ever so slightly on this hidden cushion of moisture. In this quiet space, the ice and the earth are in a constant, intimate dialogue. The glacier is no longer just a visitor resting upon the land. It has become a force of nature that interacts with the very foundation of the continent. Every inch the glacier moves is made possible by this delicate balance of pressure and heat, a hidden wetness in a world of bone-deep cold. It is a slow, rhythmic sliding, a movement so patient that it can only be measured over the course of lifetimes. As the glacier glides on its microscopic film of water, it begins to exert its full influence on the landscape beneath it. The ice is now a moving weight, a heavy hand smoothing and shaping the rock as it passes. We are standing at the threshold of a great journey, where the scale of the ice meets the scale of the earth. And as we watch this giant prepare to move, we begin to realize just how much time and patience are required to witness the true pace of a world made of ice. It is a speed that defies our modern world, a tempo set by the mountains themselves. To watch a glacier move is to witness a different kind of time. It is a pace that belongs to the mountains, far removed from the frantic ticking of a human clock. If you were to sit on a granite boulder at the edge of this ice field and watch with all your focus, the glacier would appear as still as the stone beneath you. There are no sudden shifts, no visible tremors to betray its progress. But beneath that apparent silence, the giant is in constant, deliberate motion, driven by the relentless pull of gravity and its own staggering weight. The speed of a typical glacier is measured not in miles per hour or even feet per minute, but in inches per day. It is a crawl so slow it feels more like a deep tectonic exhale than a journey. On a calm, cold day, a glacier might advance only a few inches, the length of a child's hand. This movement is the culmination of all those microscopic forces we have explored. The internal warping of the ice crystals and the thin film of water at the base, working in harmony to pull this massive weight forward by the smallest of margins. In rare moments, a glacier may undergo what scientists call a surge. During these events, the internal plumbing of the ice changes, or the lubrication at the base increases, causing the ice to speed up significantly. A surging glacier might move 10 or even 100 times faster than its normal rate for a brief period. It is as if the giant has suddenly woken from a long, deep slumber, reclaiming the valley with a newfound energy. Yet, even a surging glacier remains slow by our everyday standards, a reminder that in the world of ice, fast is a relative term. For the vast majority of these icy rivers, the pace is far more humble and consistent. Scientists often compare the average speed of a glacier to the growth of a human fingernail. It is a constant, quiet addition of distance, happening so gradually that the change is only truly visible when we look back across the span of seasons or years. This slow motion flow is what allows the ice to maintain its immense structural integrity. It does not rush, it does not falter, it simply persists, moving with a steady, unwavering commitment to its path. To truly understand the glacier, we must find that same patience within ourselves. We must learn to breathe at its tempo, a long, slow rhythm that spans decades instead of seconds. There is a profound peace in this lack of hurry. The glacier does not need to reach its destination today or even this century. It has the luxury of deep time. As it moves at this meditative pace, it begins to exert a quiet, irresistible power over everything it touches. It is not just passing through the landscape. It is beginning a long, slow process of transformation. Every inch it gains is a testament to the power of persistence. As we settle into this stillness, we can begin to see how this slow-moving giant becomes a master artist, using its incredible weight and its patient pace to carve a lasting legacy into the very stone of the mountain. To see the glacier only as a moving mass of ice is to miss its most profound role, that of a master sculptor. If we were to look beneath the hundreds of feet of blue ice, we would find a workshop of immense power and infinite patience. Here, the glacier does not merely pass over the earth. It reaches down and takes hold of it, reshaping the very foundation of the mountain as it moves. It is an artist that works not with a chisel, but with its own incredible weight and the slow, steady passage of centuries. Think of the underside of the glacier, where the ice meets the ancient bedrock. In this hidden world, the immense pressure of the ice above creates a delicate, shimmering film of meltwater at the base. This water acts as a silent messenger, seeping into the tiny fractures and deep cracks within the stone. When the pressure shifts or the temperature drops ever so slightly, that water freezes once again, expanding and locking the ice to the rock in a firm, frozen grip. It is a bond stronger than the stone itself. As the glacier continues its slow, rhythmic crawl forward, that steady inch-by-inch journey we have been following, it does not let go of what it has grasped. This is a process known to scientists as plucking. It is a quiet, slow-motion extraction where the ice literally lifts pieces of the mountain away from the earth. A fragment of granite, a slab of limestone, or a boulder as large as a cottage is pulled from its resting place, becoming a passenger within the frozen giant. The mountain does not break so much as it yields, surrendering its weight to the glacier's irresistible pull. Once these stones are plucked, they are cradled within the ice, held fast like precious artifacts. But they are also tools. As the glacier moves, it drags these captured rocks across the valley floor. It is a process of grinding and smoothing where the ice uses the mountain to reshape the mountain. This is why glacial valleys have such a distinct, gentle beauty. While a rushing river carves a sharp, narrow V into the landscape, a glacier's work results in a wide, graceful U shape with broad floors and steep, smooth walls. Visualize the landscape being transformed under this patient hand. The jagged, sharp edges of the world are being softened. The rough textures of the stone are being polished by the weight of the ice. It is a slow, beautiful reorganization of the earth happening in a silence so deep it feels sacred. The glacier is a bridge between the past and the future, carrying the bones of the mountain to new places, leaving behind a world that is smoother, wider, and more serene. Every inch the ice travels is a stroke of the sculptor's brush, a quiet testament to the power of persistence and the beauty of change. As we rest, we can imagine the land itself being cradled and transformed, reshaped by a force that has all the time in the world. This journey of the ice is creating something new out of the old, turning solid rock into something much finer. As the glacier continues its patient, heavy work, something remarkable happens at the very base of the ice. The rocks that were plucked from the mountain walls are not just carried along. They are used as tools of transformation. Under the unimaginable pressure of billions of tons of ice, these stones are pressed against the floor of the valley. It is a slow, relentless grinding, a process that happens over decades and centuries. If you were to listen closely, you might imagine a deep subterranean vibration, the sound of the mountain being ground into something new. This isn't a harsh or violent sound, but a low, steady hum, like the earth itself is exhaling a long, slow breath. This mechanical grinding produces a substance known as glacial flour. It is a silt so incredibly fine that it feels like a soft, cool powder between your fingers, even finer than the most delicate baking flour or the dust on a butterfly's wing. It is the very essence of the mountain, pulverized into microscopic particles. This flour is a testament to the glacier's strength, a physical manifestation of time and pressure working in perfect harmony. As the seasons shift and the warmer air of the lower valleys begins to touch the face of the glacier, the ice yields just a little. Tiny rivulets of meltwater begin to flow, trickling it down through the crevasses and along the surface, eventually finding their way to the glacier's edge. This water is not clear like a mountain spring. Instead, it is heavy with that fine rock dust, carrying the flour away from its frozen cradle. When this mineral-rich water flows into the still, quiet lakes nestled in the valleys below, a beautiful transformation occurs. Because the particles of glacial flour are so small and light, they do not sink to the bottom like ordinary sand or pebbles. Instead, they remain suspended in the water, floating in a perpetual liquid dance. When the sunlight hits these lakes, it doesn't pass through to the depths. Instead, it strikes the tiny particles of rock, which scatter the light in a very specific way. This is the secret behind those breathtaking, milky turquoise lakes that seem to glow with an inner light. The suspended silt reflects the shorter wavelengths of the light spectrum, the blues and the greens, giving the water an opaque, ethereal quality. Looking at such a lake is like looking into a piece of polished jade or a fallen fragment of the sky. It is a color found nowhere else in nature, born from the friction of ice against stone. Let your mind follow the path of this water as it leaves the lake and continues its journey. It flows out into the surrounding valleys, winding through meadows and forests, a slow-moving ribbon of turquoise. The water is cold, carrying the memory of the high peaks and the deep ice. As it moves, it brings life and minerals to the soil, a gift from the mountain that has been millions of years in the making. We are following this runoff now, moving away from the high, frozen heart of the glacier and down into the softer, greener world below, where the rhythm of the water matches the rhythm of our own breath. The journey of the ice is never truly over. It simply changes form, becoming the very lifeblood of the landscape. As the turquoise water winds its way through the lower meadows, carrying its mineral gifts to the world below, let us allow our awareness to drift back up the slopes. Leave the rushing streams behind for a moment and return to the high, quiet places where the air is thin and the silence is absolute. This is a moment for you to simply be, to recenter yourself in the vast, cooling presence of the ice. Take a slow, deliberate breath in, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and then release it just as slowly, letting any remaining tension melt away like snow in the early spring sun. In this stillness, imagine you are standing once more in the vast, white expanse of the glacier. The world here operates on a different clock, a clock where seconds are years and minutes are centuries. If you listen very closely, not just with your ears, but with your entire body, you can feel the rhythmic pulse of the ice. It is a low subterranean vibration, a sound so deep it is felt more as a gentle pressure than a noise. This is the sound of the glacier grinding, a slow and steady friction as millions of tons of ice press down upon the ancient bedrock. It is a rhythmic, geological breath. Try to sync your breathing with this monumental rhythm. Inhale as the ice gathers its weight, and exhale as it yields ever so slightly to the pull of gravity. There is something profoundly grounding about this movement. It is the sound of the earth reshaping itself, a patient and unstoppable force that does not hurry and does not tire. The grinding is not a harsh noise. It is a sonorous, resonant groan that speaks of stability and endurance. It is the heartbeat of the mountain, slow and steady, echoing through the stone and through the very marrow of the earth. As you lie there, feel the weight of your own body against the mattress, much like the weight of the ice against the earth. You are supported. You are safe. The air around you is still and calm, untouched by the winds that scour the peaks. There is a profound sense of peace in this cold environment, a clarity that comes from the absence of noise and the presence of ancient, frozen time. The world is reduced to simple, honest elements, the white of the snow, the blue of the ice, and the deep, dark gray of the rock beneath. Allow yourself to sink deeper into this stillness. Your breath is becoming slower now, matching the unhurried pace of the frozen world. The cold of the glacier is a distant thought. Here, in your space, there is only the comfort of warmth and the gentle, rhythmic pulse of the journey we are taking together. We are returning our focus now to the physical surface of the ice, looking closer at the features that define this massive entity. As we stand on the high plateau of the ice field, we begin to notice the scars and the openings that tell the story of the glacier's internal struggles. The places where the ice, for all its power, must eventually break under the strain of its own movement. As we look out across the vast, undulating surface of the ice, we see the elegant, deep rifts known as crevasses. They appear as long, shadowed lines against the blinding white of the snow, like the slow, deliberate ink strokes of a giant's pen. These crevasses are more than just cracks. They are the physical manifestation of the glacier's internal struggle as it navigates the rugged terrain of the mountain. They tell a story of tension and release, of the delicate balance between the hard frozen surface and the soft flowing depths below. The reason these great openings form lies in the unique personality of glacial ice. To understand it, we must imagine the glacier as a layered entity. The top 50 meters of the ice, roughly 165 feet, is what scientists call the brittle zone. Here, the ice is exposed to the freezing air and lacks the heavy weight of layers above it to keep it compressed. In this upper layer, the ice is cold, rigid, and unyielding. It cannot stretch. When the glacier flows over a ridge in the rock or is forced to turn a corner, the top layer is pulled apart, unable to bend. It simply snaps. This creates the vertical fissures that can plunge deep into the heart of the ice field. But beneath that 50-meter threshold, the world of the glacier changes entirely. The pressure from the millions of tons of ice pressing down from above becomes so great that the physical properties of the ice crystals themselves are altered. In this deep, dark environment, the ice no longer breaks. It flows. This is the plastic zone. Under such immense pressure, the ice behaves more like a very thick fluid, a slow-motion river of solid crystal. It deforms and stretches, sliding over the contours of the earth with a fluidity that seems impossible for something so cold and heavy. While the surface might be scarred with jagged crevasses, the base of the glacier remains a continuous, flowing mass, healing its own wounds as the pressure forces the ice to stay together. If you were to peer into one of these crevasses, you would see a gradient of color that defies description. Near the top, where the sun reaches, the walls are a brilliant, frosted white. But as your gaze travels deeper, the light is filtered and scattered, turning the ice into a luminous, glowing turquoise. Further down still, where the light struggles to penetrate, the color deepens into a rich, velvety navy blue. It is a quiet, cold world inside those cracks, sheltered from the mountain winds. The air inside is perfectly still, often filled with a light mist or the delicate growth of frost crystals that have formed on the walls like frozen lace. As we observe these surface features, we begin to realize that the glacier is not a single, uniform block. It is a complex, living structure with different layers, different speeds, and different ways of interacting with the world. These crevasses are the windows into its interior, revealing the incredible density and the ancient, compacted nature of the ice that lies just beneath our feet. We are standing on the skin of a giant, and every crack we see is a testament to the immense forces at work, hidden in the silence of the high peaks. We look closer now at the surface of the ice field, noticing how the wind has sculpted the snow into small wavy ridges, and how the light catches the tiny imperfections in the frozen expanse. These features are the outer face of a world that holds much more than just frozen water. Within this mass, there are other elements at play, things caught and held for millennia, waiting for the moment they are finally set free. As we stand near the edge of a melting glacier, or perhaps near a piece of ice that has broken away and drifted into a pool of meltwater, a strange and wonderful sound begins to fill the air. It is a sound that sailors and scientists have long called Bergy Seltzer. If you were to close your eyes and listen, You might think you were standing beside a freshly poured glass of sparkling water. It is a gentle, persistent fizzing, a soft, rhythmic crackling that seems to vibrate through the very air. This isn't the sound of the ice breaking or the water splashing. It is something much more profound. It is the sound of the Earth's ancient atmosphere being set free. Thousands of years ago, when the snow first fell on these heights, it was light and airy, catching the breath of the world between its crystalline arms. As that snow was buried by the seasons that followed, the air was trapped. It didn't escape. Instead, it was squeezed into tiny microscopic bubbles as the snow transformed into dense glacial ice. Over centuries, the weight of the ice above became so immense that these bubbles were subjected to incredible pressure. They became highly compressed, like miniature springs wound tight, held captive within the frozen lattice. Now, as the sun warms the ice, or as it meets the slightly warmer water of a lake, the ice begins to melt. One by one, those tiny chambers of pressurized air are breached. When the thin wall of ice finally gives way, the air inside, which has been compressed for thousands of years, suddenly expands. It pops with a delicate, high-pitched snap. Because there are millions of these bubbles in every cubic meter of ice, the individual pops blend together into a continuous, effervescent hiss. It is a tiny frozen symphony, the sound of a world from long ago finally finding its voice. When you hear Berge Seltzer, you are literally hearing the atmosphere of the past. The air inside those bubbles is not the air of today. It is a sample of the sky exactly as it was on the day the snowflake fell, perhaps during a time before industrial cities or even before the dawn of modern civilization. It is pure, untouched, and perfectly preserved. As we listen to this soft, fizzing release, we realize that the glacier is far more than just a mass of frozen water. It is a vast, silent reservoir of the air that once circulated around the globe. The focus shifts now from the physical weight of the ice to the invisible treasures it holds within its depths. We begin to see the glacier not just as a sculptor of the land, but as a keeper of record. The air trapped in these bubbles is a library of the Earth's history, a collection of invisible stories waiting to be read. As the fizzing sound fades into the background of our quiet mountain journey, we look deeper into the blue heart of the ice, wondering what other secrets are held within this frozen archive of time. The ice is no longer just a cold obstacle. It is a witness, a storyteller that has been meticulously documenting the changes of our planet for eons. Each layer we have discussed, from the fresh snow to the deep plastic ice, acts as a page in a massive, crystalline book. By looking at the air and the particles trapped alongside it, we can begin to reconstruct the story of the world as it was long before we were here to see it. As those tiny bubbles of ancient air fizz and pop into the present, we begin to see the glacier for what it truly is, a vast frozen time capsule. It is a silent librarian, meticulously filing away a sample of the world's atmosphere every single year, layer by layer, for millennia. While the surface of the earth changes, forests growing and receding, civilizations rising and falling, the deep ice remains a constant, faithful witness to the chemistry of the sky. To unlock these secrets, Scientists travel to the most remote, quiet parts of the ice sheets, places where the wind is the only sound for hundreds of miles. Here, they perform a delicate operation, using specialized drills to extract what are known as ice cores. Imagine a very long, hollow needle descending hundreds, even thousands of feet into the heart of the glacier. When it is pulled back up, it brings with it a slender, translucent cylinder of ice, a perfect vertical timeline of the Earth's past. As you lie there, breathing slowly and deeply, imagine looking at one of these works in a quiet, chilled laboratory. It looks like a pillar of crystal, but as you look closer, you can see the individual layers like the rings of an ancient tree. Each layer represents 1 year of snowfall. In these pillars of ice, we find more than just frozen water. We find the very breath of the planet. By analyzing the chemicals and gases trapped in those microscopic bubbles we heard earlier, researchers can measure exactly how much carbon dioxide was in the air during the last ice age, or how the temperature shifted over thousands of years. In the deepest, oldest parts of the Antarctic ice sheet, these cores have allowed us to look back through time for over 800,000 years. That is nearly 1 million years of history preserved in a state of perfect, frigid stillness. Within these layers, scientists have even found thin, dark bands of microscopic ash, the ghostly remains of massive volcanic eruptions that happened tens of thousands of years ago. The ash fell with the snow, was buried, and has been held in that exact spot ever since, waiting to tell its story to anyone patient enough to listen. The ice is a library of the past, a cold and beautiful archive of every breath the Earth has taken. It reminds us of the incredible continuity of our world, how the small events of a single afternoon, a volcanic puff, a dusty wind, a heavy snowfall, are woven into a much larger tapestry of time. But for this library to stay intact, the glacier must exist in a state of constant rhythmic movement and renewal. It is not a static block of ice, but a living system that must maintain a delicate internal harmony to survive the passing centuries. To understand how a glacier persists through these vast stretches of time, we must look at how it manages its own growth, balancing what it gains from the sky with what it gives back to the world below. Imagine, if you will, a faint invisible line drawn across the vast white expanse of the mountain. In the world of glaciology, this is known as the equilibrium line. It is a quiet, subtle boundary that marks the heart of the glacier's existence. To find it, you would look for the place where the brilliant, powdery white of the recent winter snow gives way to the older, denser, and slightly darker ice beneath. This line is the balance point of a great frozen scale, and it tells the story of whether a glacier is growing, shrinking, or resting in a perfect, peaceful stasis. Above this invisible boundary lies what we call the accumulation zone. You can think of this as the glacier's nursery. High up in these frigid reaches, the air remains so cold that the summer sun cannot melt away all the snow that fell during the winter. Here, the snow remains year-round, piling up in soft, heavy drift. With every passing season, the weight of the new snow presses down on the layers below, slowly turning those fragile flakes into the dense, blue ice we have explored. This is where the glacier gathers its strength, pulling moisture from the clouds and turning it into a solid, enduring mass. Below the equilibrium line, the environment shifts. This lower region is known as the ablation zone. In this area, the glacier is lower in altitude and the air is just a little bit warmer. Here, the ice begins to pay its debt back to the world. The summer sun is strong enough to melt the surface, creating those tinny sapphire blue pools and trickling streams that sing a quiet song against the ice. Some of the ice even vanishes directly into the air as water vapor, bypassing the liquid stage entirely in a ghostly process called sublimation. In the ablation zone, the glacier is constantly losing mass, slowly offering itself up to the valleys and the rivers below. The health of a glacier depends entirely on the relationship between these two zones. A glacier is considered to be in a state of perfect health when the amount of snow added at the top in the accumulation zone exactly equals the amount of ice lost at the bottom through melting and evaporation. It is a natural budget, a rhythmic exchange that has persisted for thousands of years. When the scales are balanced, the glacier maintains its size, standing as a timeless monument to the Earth's climate. As you breathe in the cool, still air of your imagination, try to visualize this slow-motion conveyor belt. The ice is never truly still. It is always flowing from the cold heights of the accumulation zone down toward the warmer reaches of the ablation zone. It is a journey of incredible patience. A single snowflake falling at the very top of a mountain might take hundreds or even thousands of years to travel down through the body of the glacier before it finally reaches the equilibrium line and eventually melts into a mountain stream. This is the life cycle of the glacier, a continuous rolling loop of frozen time, where birth at the summit eventually leads to a gentle return to the water cycle at the base. But for some glaciers, the journey does not end in a quiet valley or a trickling stream. For the largest and most powerful of these icy giants, the path leads all the way to the edge of the world, where the land meets the deep, cold embrace of the sea. It is here that the glacier undergoes its most dramatic transformation, shedding its weight in a spectacle of sound and scale that creates the wandering giants of the ocean. As the glacier continues its slow, rhythmic march downward, it eventually reaches the very edge of the continent. Here, the ice meets the deep, dark blue of the ocean. It is a meeting of two worlds, the ancient frozen history of the mountains and the restless, flowing energy of the sea. The glacier doesn't simply stop at the shoreline. Driven by the immense weight behind it, the ice pushes out over the water, forming a floating platform known as an ice shelf. For a time, the sea cradles this extension of the glacier, but the tides and the currents exert a gentle, persistent pressure. Eventually, a moment of transition arrives. This is the process of calving, with a deep resonant sound that echoes like a distant, low-frequency drum. A massive section of the ice shears away from the main body. It is a moment of release. This newly formed giant, an iceberg, settles into the water, bobbing slowly as it finds its balance in the waves. What was once part of a slow-motion river on land is now a majestic, free-floating island of ice, ready to begin a new journey through the currents of the world. These icebergs are the true giants of the sea, yet they are masters of mystery. When you look at an iceberg drifting in the open ocean, you're only seeing a small fraction of its true scale. There is a scientific reason for this, rooted in the simple physics of density. Glacial ice is made of fresh water, which is slightly less dense than the salt water of the ocean. Because of this, the iceberg sits deep in the water, supported by the buoyancy of the sea. In fact, only about 10% of an iceberg's total mass is visible above the waterline. The remaining 90% remains hidden beneath the surface, a vast, jagged cathedral of blue ice reaching down into the cold depths. If you were to look beneath the waves, you would see that the tip above the water is supported by a foundation so massive it can weigh millions or even billions of tons. This hidden bulk acts as a keel, keeping the iceberg stable as it is carried along by deep ocean currents that move independently of the surface winds. As we watch these white monuments drift away from the coast, we see the glacier's final gift to the ocean. The land-based ice has become a wanderer. It moves with a quiet, heavy grace, leaving the stillness of the mountain valleys for the vast open horizon. The journey that began as a single fragile snowflake high in the atmosphere has now reached its grandest form, a mountain of ice cradled by the sea, beginning a slow trek toward warmer waters, even as it floats in the salt water thousands of miles from the peak where it first fell. It carries the signature of its origin within every crystal. As we watch this mountain of ice drift slowly across the dark expanse of the ocean, it is easy to see only its rugged, chaotic exterior. To the naked eye, an iceberg appears as a jagged, irregular monolith, a fortress of ice with sharp peaks and deep shadowed ravines. Yet, beneath this rough surface lies a secret of perfect order. There is a profound geometry to the iceberg, a hidden logic that traces its way back to the very beginning of our journey. If we were to shrink down, smaller than the eye can see, and look into the heart of this billion-ton giant, we would find that it is built upon the exact same blueprint as the tiny snowflake we followed earlier. You might remember the hexagonal lattice, that elegant six-sided arrangement of water molecules. When those first water vapors clung to a speck of dust in the high atmosphere, they bonded at a specific angle, 104.5 degrees. This simple, microscopic rule dictated the shape of the snowflake's arms, and remarkably, it remains the fundamental law of the iceberg today, even after centuries of being buried under the weight of a glacier, even after being compressed into ice so dense it glows blue. The water molecules never lose their preference for that six-sided shape. An iceberg is, in a very real sense, a single, massive crystal structure. The molecular structure of the ice remains rooted in that hexagonal lattice, regardless of the scale. Whether it is a single flake resting on a mitten or a frozen island the size of a city, the internal architecture is the same. The macro and the micro are mirror images of one another. This connection between the very small and the very large is one of the most calming constants in our natural world. It tells us that there's a rhythm and a reason to the landscape, even when it seems vast and overwhelming. The jagged edges we see above the water are simply the result of the ice fracturing along the lines of its own crystalline strength. The iceberg is not just a block of frozen water. It is a manifestation of a geometric truth that has existed since the first cold nights of the Earth. As the iceberg continues its slow, silent voyage, it carries this ancient symmetry with it. It is a wanderer from the mountains, a remnant of a time and place far removed from the salt spray of the sea. But while the ice drifts away to meet its eventual end in the warmer currents, the glacier it left behind continues its work on the land. The ice may be gone from the valleys, but it has left behind unmistakable footprints, signatures of its passage that will remain long after the last crystal has melted back into the sea. These marks are the memories of the ice, etched into the very bones of the Earth. As we leave the drifting iceberg behind and return our gaze to the land, we begin to see the physical memories the ice has left in its wake. Among the most striking of these are the erratics. Imagine, for a moment, standing in a wide, rolling meadow. The grass is soft and green, swaying gently in a quiet evening breeze. It is a landscape of smooth curves and open space. But there, sitting in the very center of this field, is a massive boulder. It is as large as a small house, jagged and dark, looking completely out of place against the soft soil and delicate wild flowers. It looks almost as if it fell from the sky. A misplaced giant resting in a world where it does not belong. These are the glacial erratics, the great wanderers of the geological world. They are called erratics because their composition is entirely different from the bedrock beneath them. They are strangers in a strange land, silent witnesses to a time when the world was white and cold. To understand how this giant stone arrived in such a peaceful meadow, we must look back to the peak of the Ice Age. Thousands of years ago, this boulder was part of a high mountain range, perhaps hundreds of miles to the north. As the glacier grew and began its slow, heavy crawl across the continent, it acted like a massive, frozen conveyor belt. The ice reached out and gripped the rock, tearing it from the mountainside through the immense power of its weight. The boulder was then tucked deep within the glacier's frozen body, protected and carried along in a slow-motion journey that would last for centuries. It is a remarkable fact of geology that some erratics have been carried across entire landscapes, traveling 500, 600, or even 1,000 miles from their original mountain homes. They moved at the rhythmic glacial pace we have been following, sometimes only an inch or two a day, encased in a tomb of blue crystal. They were part of the ice, moving as the ice moved, indifferent to the passage of human time. When the climate eventually warmed and the great ice sheets began to thin and retreat, the glacier could no longer carry its heavy burden. As the ice turned to water and flowed away into the rivers and seas, it lowered these massive stones gently onto the new landscape. The ice simply let go, leaving the boulder exactly where it stood when the melting reached it. If you were to walk up to one of these stones today and lay your hand against its cool, rough surface, you might feel the deep grooves and scratches etched into its sides. These are called striations. They were carved into the stone as it was dragged against the solid bedrock of the earth, a physical record of the friction and the power of the journey. The erratic sits in the quiet meadow now, but it carries the history of the mountain and the strength of the ice within its grain. These boulders are more than just rocks. They are the lasting footprints of the ice on the land. They are tangible proof of a journey that lasted longer than human civilizations, reminding us of the profound physical impact the ice had on the shape of our world. But the ice did not only leave behind these solitary giants. As it moved, it also gathered smaller fragments of the earth, pebbles sand and clay, rearranging the very surface of the valleys into long, sweeping ridges that tell the story of where the glacier once lived. If you were to look out across a valley once carved by ice, you might notice long, winding ridges that look almost like man-made embankments. These are not the work of human hands, but the quiet architecture of the glacier. They are called moraines, and they are the physical debris left behind by the ice's long, slow labor. To understand how they form, we must think of the glacier not as a static block of ice, but as a living, breathing conveyor belt for the Earth's crust. As the glacier flows, it is constantly gathering material. It plucks rocks from the mountain peaks and grinds the bedrock beneath it into a fine powder. All of this material is carried along, trapped within the frozen mass or riding on its surface. When the ice moves against the sides of a valley, it acts like a giant celestial plow, pushing rocks and soil to the edges. These lateral moraines form long, straight lines that trace the former path of the ice. They are the shadows of the glacier's edges, standing as silent witnesses to how wide and deep the ice once ran through the mountain passes. In the quiet of the high country, these ridges often become the foundations for ancient forests, their soil rich with the minerals the ice ground down so many years ago. But the most impressive of these structures is the terminal moraine. This ridge marks the absolute limit of the glacier's reach, the furthest point it ever traveled during its long life. Imagine the front of the glacier, a wall of ice hundreds of feet high, slowly pushing a mound of earth forward for centuries. Eventually, the climate warms, and the ice begins to melt at the same rate it moves forward. At this point of equilibrium, the glacier drops everything it has been carrying in a single massive heap. This terminal moraine is the finish line, a monument to the glacier's greatest extent. In many parts of the world, these terminal moraines have created natural dams, holding back the meltwater to form the deep, clear lakes we see today. The landscape we walk upon is often a patchwork of these moraines, a map of where the ice once stood and where it finally gave way. This process of moving the earth, of grinding mountains into dust and building new hills happens so slowly that it is almost imperceptible to us. It is a rhythm of deep time, a slow pulse that has shaped the continents over millions of years. As we stand on these ancient ridges, feeling the stillness of the air, we can begin to appreciate the sheer scale of the ice's influence. It is not just a force of destruction, but one of creation and balance. The vast white expanses of the world do more than just carve the land. They protect it, acting as a vital part of the Earth's cooling system. This frozen world, this cryosphere, plays a silent but essential role in keeping our planet at a temperature that sustains life. The cryosphere is a vast and silent kingdom, a collective term for all the parts of our Earth where water is found in its solid, frozen state. It includes the grand ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland, the seasonal snow that blankets the northern forests, and the ancient glaciers we have been following on their slow journey down the mountain. This cryosphere is far more than just a collection of ice. It is a global regulator, a gentle hand that helps maintain the delicate thermal balance of our world. Think for a moment of the sun's rays traveling through the cold vacuum of space, finally reaching the outer edges of our atmosphere. When those rays strike the dark blue of the deep ocean or the rich greens of a dense forest, much of that solar energy is absorbed, warming the ground and the water. But when that light meets the brilliant, pristine white of a glacier or a fresh snowfield, something different happens. Instead of being soaked up, the light is bounced back, reflected away from the surface, and returned towards the skies. This phenomenon is known to scientists as the albedo effect. The word albedo comes from the Latin word for whiteness, and it describes a surface's ability to reflect solar radiation. A dark asphalt road has a very low albedo, absorbing almost all the heat that hits it. But a fresh, clean glacier is one of the most reflective surfaces on our planet. It can reflect up to 90% of the sunlight that reaches it, sending that energy back out into space before it has a chance to warm the Earth's surface. In this way, the glaciers act as giant mirrors, shielding the planet from the full intensity of the sun. This reflection is a crucial part of the Earth's climate system. By keeping themselves cold, the glaciers help keep the entire planet cool. It is a quiet, rhythmic interaction between the light from above and the ice below, a constant dialogue that has stabilized our world's temperature for millennia. When you look across a vast ice field, the brightness can be overwhelming even on a cloudy day. This is the albedo effect in action, a visible sign of the ice protecting the land beneath it. This cooling power extends far beyond the edges of the glacier itself. By reflecting so much heat, the cryosphere influences wind patterns and ocean currents, helping to distribute coolness around the globe and preventing the tropics from becoming too hot. It is a massive, interconnected web of temperature and light. As the seasons change and the snow cover expands or retreats, the Earth's overall albedo shifts like a slow breath. In the winter, as the white blanket spreads across the continents, the planet reflects more energy. In the summer, as the edges of the ice melt back to reveal the darker earth and water, more heat is retained. This natural pulse is part of the Earth's ancient cycle, a balance that the glaciers have maintained with steady frozen persistence. But while the surface remains a brilliant reflective shield, the sun's warmth occasionally begins to work its way into the structure of the ice. On the warmest days of the year, the very top layer of the glacier begins to soften, and tiny trickles of water start to gather in the hollows of the ice. These small streams are the beginning of a complex network, a hidden architecture that exists far beneath the blinding white surface. As we look closer at the face of the glacier, we begin to see where the light ends and the internal journey of the water begins. As the midday sun warms the surface of the ice, those tiny trickles we noticed earlier begin to find one another. They merge into small, crystal-clear brooks that meander across the white expanse, carving miniature canyons into the frozen surface. But these streams do not always flow toward the edges of the glacier. Instead, they often disappear into the heart of the ice itself through remarkable structures known as moulins. A moulin is a vertical shaft, a deep and narrow well that the water has bored through the solid ice. If you were to stand near the edge of one, you would hear a low resonant roar, the sound of water plunging into the darkness. The name comes from the French word for mill, because the swirling water often carries small stones and silt that grind away at the ice, much like a millstone. These shafts are some of the most striking features of a glacier's internal plumbing. They are polished to a glass-like smoothness by the friction of the falling water, glowing with a deep ethereal blue light that fades into blackness as the shaft descends. These moulins are not merely surface features, they are the gateways to a hidden world. They can reach hundreds, sometimes even thousands of feet down, piercing through the entire thickness of the glacier until they hit the bedrock at the bottom. This creates a best interconnected drainage system within the ice mass. Once the water reaches the base, it spreads out, forming a thin, pressurized film between the ice and the stone. This layer of water is what allows the glacier to skate across the landscape, acting as a vital lubricant for its slow, heavy journey. Inside the glacier, away from the wind and the sun, the environment is one of profound echoing stillness, punctuated only by the rhythmic thrum of the falling water. There are caverns and tunnels carved by this internal flow, cathedrals of ice where the walls are scalloped by the movement of the water. It is a world that few will ever see, a labyrinth of frozen corridors that exist only for a season before the shifting weight of the ice closes them or moves them along. When we think of a glacier, we often think of it as a solid, static block. But through this internal plumbing, we see that it is a dynamic entity, full of movement and change. The water that enters a moulin today might have been a snowflake 1,000 years ago, trapped in the ice until the sun finally set it free to journey to the dark, hidden floor of the world. As this water reaches the base, it carries with it the immense pressure of the ice above. It is here, at the interface of ice and rock, that we begin to understand the true scale of the glacier's power. The weight of this frozen giant is so great that it doesn't just reshape the surface of the land. It actually forces the very crust of the earth to bend and yield beneath it. To truly understand the weight of a glacier, we must look at the earth not as a rigid, unmoving rock, but as something more flexible and responsive. The crust of our planet, which feels so solid beneath our feet, is actually floating on a semi-fluid layer of mantle far below. This relationship is a delicate balance of buoyancy and mass. When a glacier grows to be miles thick, it becomes a heavy burden that the Earth's crust must carry. The weight is so immense, trillions of tons of frozen water pressing down on a single region, that the crust begins to sag. It yields to the pressure, slowly sinking deeper into the softer mantle beneath it. This process is known as isostatic depression. Imagine a soft velvet cushion. If you place a heavy stone in the center, the fabric and the stuffing beneath it slowly compress and dip, forming a bowl. The earth responds to the ice in much the same way, though on a scale of time and distance that is hard to grasp. As the glacier sits upon the land for thousands of years, the ground beneath it may sink by hundreds, even thousands of feet. It is a testament to the sheer relentless power of the ice. It doesn't just sit on the landscape, it reshapes the very profile of the planet's surface, bending the world to its will. But the story of this weight does not end when the ice begins to melt. As the climate warms and the glacier retreats, that immense burden is lifted. However, the Earth does not simply snap back into its original shape. Because the mantle below is thick and viscous, like cold honey or heavy syrup, it takes a very long time for it to flow back into place. This slow upward movement of the land is called isostatic rebound. It is the Earth's way of recovering its posture after the weight is gone, a slow motion rising that continues long after the ice has vanished into the sea. In many parts of the world, such as Scandinavia, Canada, and parts of the northern United States, the land is still rising today. Even though the great ice sheets of the last ice age disappeared over 10,000 years ago, the crust is still making its way back up, ascending at a rate of a few millimeters or centimeters every year. It is a beautiful, silent reminder of the ice that once was, a lingering echo of a frozen past. The Earth is still remembering the weight of the glaciers, still breathing a long, slow sigh of relief as it returns to its natural state. This profound physical impact goes beyond just the height of the land. It changes the paths of rivers, the depth of lakes, and the very shape of the coastlines. It is a reminder that nothing on our planet is truly static. Even the continents themselves are in a state of constant rhythmic adjustment, influenced by the ebb and flow of the ice. This movement, so slow that it is invisible to the human eye, connects the deep history of the Earth to the present moment. It shows us that the glacier is more than just a collection of frozen crystals. It is a force that interacts with the heart of the planet, leaving a legacy that lasts for eons. As we consider the vastness of this process, we can feel the deep, steady pulse of the world, a rhythm that has been set by the arrival and departure of the ice. Within this vast, slow movement of the Earth's crust, there is another, more frequent pulse, a seasonal rhythm that guides the life of the ice. If you were to watch a glacier from a great distance over many years, condensed into a few moments, you would see it appear to breathe. This is the seasonal dance of the frozen world, a cycle of expansion and contraction that mirrors the very breath in your lungs. In the winter, when the air turns sharp and the sky becomes a heavy slate gray, the glacier prepares for its period of growth. High up in the accumulation zone, where the peaks touch the cold underbelly of the clouds, the snow falls in thick, silent blankets. This is the glacier's inhale. Each new layer of snow adds weight and pressure, feeding the icy mass and driving it forward. During these long, dark months, the glacier advances. Its massive leading edge, the terminus, creeps slowly down the mountain valleys, reclaiming the land with a cold, relentless grace. The world around it falls into a deep, muffled silence, as if the landscape itself is holding its breath alongside the ice. But as the year turns and the sun begins its slow ascent, the rhythm shifts. The spring brings a change in the light, a soft gold and silver shimmer that dances across the white expanse. In the warmth of the summer sun, the glacier begins its exhale. This is the period of ablation, where the ice at the lower, warmer altitudes begins to melt and evaporate. You can hear the change in the environment. The silence of winter is replaced by the musical trickling of meltwater. Small sapphire blue streams form on the surface of the ice, carving winding paths before plunging into the depths of the glacier. The ice edge pulls back, retreating slightly up the valley, as it sheds the excess mass it cannot sustain in the heat. This back and forth movement, this steady advance and retreat, is not a sign of instability. Rather, it is the heartbeat of the ice. It is a cycle that has repeated for millions of years, a predictable and ancient pattern carved into the rhythm of the Earth's orbit. Our planet does not sit perfectly upright as it travels through the void. It tilts and wobbles slightly on its axis, and the path it takes around the sun changes shape over thousands of years. These subtle astronomical shifts are the conductors of the Earth's great icy symphony. They determine when the ice will march across the continents and when it will hide away in the high mountains. When you think of the glacier in this way, it ceases to be a cold, static object and becomes part of a much larger living system. It is synchronized with the stars and the seasons, moving in harmony with the tilt of the world. Take a moment now to find that same rhythm within yourself. Feel the cool air enter your lungs, much like the winter snow piling high on the peaks. And as you breathe out, feel the tension leave your body, like the gentle summer meltwater flowing toward the sea. There is a profound comfort in knowing that this cycle has continued long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone. The glacier does not hurry its advance, nor does it fear its retreat. It simply follows the path set for it by the heavens, moving with a deliberate, unhurried pace. This rhythmic movement connects the smallest seasonal change to the grandest cycles of the cosmos, reminding us that we are all part of a steady, breathing world. As the glacier continues its ancient dance, we can let go of the day's worries and sink into the quiet, rhythmic peace of the ice. As we contemplate these vast planetary cycles, let us return our focus to where this journey truly began, with a single, delicate snowflake. In the context of a mountain range or a continental ice sheet, a snowflake seems almost impossibly fragile. It is a structure of air and water, so light that it drifts on the slightest breeze, and so sensitive that the mere touch of a warmth can dissolve its intricate symmetry in an instant. And yet, there is a quiet, stubborn persistence in that fragility. The snowflake does not truly vanish when it is buried by the storm. Instead, it enters into a long, slow pact with the flakes that land above it. It gives up its individual shape to become part of something far greater. To understand the sheer scale of this collective effort, consider the density of the deep glacial ice. It takes roughly 100,000 individual snowflakes, each one a unique masterpiece of molecular engineering, to create just one single cubic inch of solid glacial ice. If you were to look at a massive glacier, miles long and hundreds of feet deep, the number of snowflakes required to build it becomes a figure beyond human comprehension. It is a testament to the power of the small, the many, and the patient. We often think of strength as something hard, fast, or loud. But the glacier teaches us a different kind of strength, the strength of accumulation. A single snowflake has no power to reshape the earth, but 1 trillion snowflakes pressed together by time and gravity can slowly smooth the hardest granite. They can carve out valleys, shape the hills, and gently press down on the very crust of the planet. This is the great paradox of the frozen world. The most delicate thing we can imagine, a lace-like crystal of frozen vapor, is the primary architect of the world's most enduring landscapes. As you lie there, perhaps you can feel the weight of your own stillness, much like the weight of the snow on the heights. There is no need to be a force of nature tonight. There is only the need to be present, like a single flake in the vast field. You are part of a larger whole, a grander design that moves with a slow, inevitable grace. The journey from the sky to the depths of the ice is a long one, but it is a journey of transformation rather than loss. The snowflake is not gone. It is simply rested within the heart of the mountain, waiting for its next chapter. Bridging the gap between the microscopic and the monumental allows us to see the world with a sense of quiet wonder. We see that the small details of our lives, the quiet breaths, the soft thoughts, the moments of stillness, are the building blocks of our own inner landscapes. Just as the glaciers built from the humble snowflake, our peace is built from these small moments of letting go. We are moving toward a final stillness now, a place where the journey of the ice reaches its quiet conclusion and the cycle prepares to begin once more. And so, we arrive at the threshold of the ultimate stillness. It is a quiet place where the long, slow journey of the ice reaches its natural conclusion. After centuries of pressing downward, after millennia of carving through stone and sliding across the bedrock, the glacier finally meets its end. For some glaciers, this end is a meeting with the sea, where the ice becomes a drifting berg, slowly dissolving into the salt water. For others, the end is even more subtle, a quiet melting into a glacial stream or a silent evaporation directly into the thin, cold air. This process of turning directly from a solid into a gas is called sublimation. It happens without a sound, without a ripple. On a clear, sunny day, high on a mountain, the ice simply thins, its molecules untethering themselves from the hexagonal lattice and drifting back into the atmosphere as invisible vapor. It is as if the ice is exhaling, letting go of its physical form to become part of the wind once more. There is a profound peace in this dissolution. The tension of the weight and the pressure is over. The ice is light again. It is here that we see the true beauty of the Earth's design. The water cycle ensures that nothing is ever truly lost. Every single molecule that once formed the arm of a snowflake, every atom that was squeezed into the blue depths of a glacier, is part of a grand eternal loop. The water you see today is the same water that has existed on this planet for billions of years. It has been through the hearts of volcanoes, the depths of the trenches, and the highest reaches of the stratosphere. Science tells us that the water cycle is a closed system. The molecules currently locked in the ice will one day, inevitably, be lifted by the sun, gathered into a cloud, and whispered back down to Earth as a fresh new snowflake. The snowflake that fell today may have been part of a glacier during the last ice age, or it may have been part of a tropical rainstorm just a few weeks ago. This realization closes the loop of our narrative. We began with a single breath in the cold mountain air, watching a crystal form around a speck of dust. We followed that crystal as it became part of a massive, ancient force. And now, we see that same crystal returning to its origin. The journey of the ice is not a straight line with a beginning and an end, but a circle, a slow rhythmic pulse that mirrors the breathing of the planet itself. As the ice returns to the sea or the sky, it prepares for the cycle to begin all over again, 1,000,000 years from now, or perhaps just tomorrow. In this stillness, there is no urgency. There is only the steady, reliable movement of the world. The molecule that was once part of a glacier is now free to drift, rest, and to wait. And just like that molecule, you're now free to let go of the day's weight. The journey is nearly complete. The circle is almost closed. And all that remains is the quiet, dark peace of the world at rest. As the ice dissolves back into the elements, it leaves behind a landscape changed, but it leaves itself behind as well, returning to the infinite sky. And now, as we reach the end of this cold, quiet path, it is time to let the mind find its own place of total stillness. We have traveled a vast distance tonight, following the path of a single, fragile crystal from the high, thin air of the troposphere down to the crushing depths of the ancient ice. We watched as a tiny speck of dust became the heart of a hexagonal star, and we saw how that star joined billions of others to silence the world with a blanket of white. We felt the weight of centuries pressing down, turning snow into fern and fern into the dense blue heart of a glacier. We moved with the slow, rhythmic pulse of the ice river, grinding mountains into dust and carving valleys that will last for eternity. We saw the ice reach the sea, break away into the dark salt water, and finally we watched it return to the air as a whisper of vapor. The journey of the water molecule is a story of constant change, yet it is also a story of incredible persistence. In the most remote and frozen reaches of our planet, deep within the heart of the East Antarctic ice sheet, there is ice that has remained unmoved, unchanged, and untouched by the sun for over 1,000,000 years. In those depths, there is no sound. There is no wind. There is only the perfect heavy silence of a world held in a frozen embrace. This ice is a witness to 1,000,000 winters and 1,000,000 summers, existing in a state of absolute unchanging peace. It is the ultimate expression of stillness, a place where time seems to fold in on itself and rest. You can find that same stillness now. Like the ice deep beneath the Antarctic surface, you are protected from the noise and the movement of the world above. The day is behind you. Its weight has been distributed and transformed, and all that remains is the quiet, steady rhythm of your own breath. The science of the world tells us that everything is in motion, from the spinning of atoms to the drifting of continents. But it also tells us that there are places of profound rest. The glacier, for all its power and its movement, is born from a single, quiet moment in the cloud. And your rest, for all its necessity, begins here, in this single, quiet moment of letting go. As you drift now, imagine the soft blue light of the deep glacial ice. It is a cool, calming color that fills the senses and slows the heart. There is nothing left to do, nowhere left to go, and no more facts to gather. The story of the ice has been told, and the circle is complete. The mountains are still. The air is calm. The snow has stopped falling, leaving the world wrapped in a thick, porous layer of silence. May your sleep be as deep and as restorative as the heart of that ancient glacier. May you find the peace of the million-year ice, held safely in the quiet dark, far beneath the surface of the world. You are part of the rhythm of the earth, part of the cycle of the clouds and the sea, and now you are part of the stillness. Sleep deeply, sleep quietly. Let the world continue its slow, patient turn without you. All is well, all is still, all is at rest. Good night. Hush now, just rest. Stillness, peace.